Nothing about you feels like obsessed with my job. Everything about you feels like snake oil salesman. Stephanie White talked to Renee Montgomery because that's all this organization does. They like talking to people, platforming people, going on platforms of people who just trash this fan base, who just trash this team. That's what this Indiana Fever franchise does best. So she goes on, she talks to Renee Montgomery. They not like us. They not like us. And she says, oh, well, teams are expecting the pick and roll. We got to change. We can't do the same thing over and over again.
They only played about 13 games together last year, so there wasn't really enough time to build any real chemistry or establish a system. Then, at Stephanie White's introductory press conference, there was talk about a Stockton-Malone-style pick-and-roll setup, as if they already had the league's best duo. But honestly, that kind of framing feels like a stretch. I've had enough of it. This is beyond reasonable comparison territory. It's like she's operating in her own, completely separate reality. Stephanie White is facing some very serious scrutiny right now, and things have gotten even worse because the evidence is now out in the open for everyone to see. What began as a somewhat unclear story about the coaching staff has started to fall apart publicly. The issue is that the explanation Coach White gave about how she was handling star players Clark and Aaliyah Boston doesn't line up with what actually took place during games.
So we aren't going to run it when it was clear as day that no team has an answer for the ABCC two-man game.
To that point, I've watched a lot of Aaliyah Boston and Unrivaled even coming into this, and she is such a powerhouse that I think, I know she's going to be happy to have Caitlin back because that was one of the high targets in the league of that two-man game. So what does that look like now? Even Raven moving Caitlin off the ball, having a two-man game with Aaliyah Boston, you have a lot of weapons, and people sometimes don't realize that's when the coaches now, it's your job to mesh that whole thing together and make it work.
Yeah, I think creating space for C and AB to do what they do in the two-man game.
You're probably not going to see that same action work on the initial side of the floor anymore because opposing teams have already figured it out and built game plans to stop it. The idea now is to run the offense more through Aaliyah Boston as a central hub and mix in some inverted actions. She already proved last season that she can operate like a point forward when needed, taking on a lot of ball handling responsibilities whenever Clark wasn't on the court. The goal is to let her initiate more plays, while still getting her and Clark to work together effectively. At the same time, the offense has to be structured in a way that also creates enough space and opportunities for Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell is described as an elite guard who can create her own shot at any moment, attack downhill, and force defensive rotations that open up opportunities for teammates like Aaliyah Boston and Clark. The idea is that her scoring and pressure can help make the overall offense more effective. However, the original speaker also reacts very emotionally and dismissively to this assessment, strongly disagreeing with the evaluation and mocking the perspective being presented. They argue that the ranking of players implied in the discussion feels inaccurate and criticize the viewpoint in a harsh, disrespectful way. To be clear, this isn't being framed as a simple miscommunication or something that was misunderstood or taken out of context. Instead, it's being presented as something more intentional. Fans have gone back and reviewed game footage, collected exact quotes from press conferences, and compared them directly with in-game coaching decisions. When placed side by side, the differences they found are being described as very serious and potentially damaging to the original narrative.
If they can't stop it, exactly. She keeps playing defense against her team for the opponent. What the fuck? They would stop doing something that they couldn't stop before. Best pick and roll in the league. Is she really this stupid? She thinks she's so smart. She's an idiot. She is an idiot. Stephanie White, you've lost the plot. You can't see the forest from the trees. You're just too dumb. Seriously. It's the only way I can put it. But you're an elite ball knower. Don't worry. The shills, they'll defend you. It would be smart for Stephanie White to put Clark off ball because she's an elite ball knower, right?
People are being criticized for supposedly defending Stephanie White instead of addressing the issues directly. The speaker is urging commentators and media members to stop what they see as biased coverage and acknowledge the situation openly. They argue that not playing to a team's strengths is a key mistake, and they link that directly to the outcome of the game, suggesting that this strategic approach ultimately led to the loss. The speaker claims that she has not been honest since the beginning. They suggest that the team might briefly run more pick-and-roll plays in an upcoming game just to respond to criticism, but argue it won't be a consistent part of the system. They also express strong doubt in the coaching leadership, criticizing the coach's authority and decision-making process. In their view, the coaching structure seems uncertain and overly dependent on input from assistants rather than clear direction from the head coach. The gap between what the coaching staff said they intended to do and what actually happened on the court is being described as too large and too detailed to be dismissed as a simple mistake. Now that these inconsistencies have been highlighted publicly, the situation appears to be creating visible discomfort within the organization. According to the speaker, this is reflected in recent press conferences and in the cautious, non-committal answers coming from the Indiana Fever camp.
Lying snake. And I don't give a crap what Slurp F's. I'm sick of that crap. You cannot sit here and put all the other crap aside. You cannot sit here and tell me that this is a good basketball coach, that she's going to sit there at a press conference and talk about it being the greatest pick and roll team in the history, talk about Stockton and Malone. By the way, Renee Montgomery, who you know I've been hard on, I'm going to give her here more credit here than Stephanie White, talking about the pick and roll with AB and Caitlin Clark and putting Raven off the ball. And what does Stephanie White do? Oh, well, yeah, the pick and roll, it's nonstop. It's unstoppable even when they know it's coming. But because they know it's coming.
The speaker argues that the team is making things easier for opponents by not consistently running certain offensive actions. They claim the strategy is shifting toward using Aaliyah Boston as the main hub of the offense in a point-forward role, while also involving Kelsey Mitchell more prominently. They express strong frustration with these decisions and question the coaching approach being used for the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark, suggesting they disagree with how the system is being implemented. When your star player is Caitlin Clark and your second key cornerstone is Aaliyah Boston, it's important to recognize that a massive fan base, possibly one of the largest in WNBA history, is closely watching every detail of how they are supported, developed, and used on the court. So when there starts to be a mismatch between what was promised and what is actually done, there's no way to avoid scrutiny. Every clip gets brought back up, and every controversial moment is revisited and analyzed in detail. Fans are increasingly frustrated, arguing there's a clear gap between what the coaching staff says and what actually happens on the court. They've gone back through quotes and game footage, comparing them closely and claiming the evidence shows a consistent pattern rather than isolated mistakes. Because of this, many believe the team is facing a serious credibility issue, with trust eroding as decisions and public statements appear to contradict each other.